Hi everyone, so about maybe 6 years or so ago I did a video on my YouTube channel on how to split a decorative font. You sometimes see these letters that are split in half on places like Pinterest, and they're used for signs or home decor. And the particular font I used at that time, I don't think is available anymore. Several weeks ago, when I was looking for something else under font, I came across this font here. The name of it is Remeslo STD. I'll try and zoom in for you. It's at the top of the screen here, and I've already installed it onto my Mac computer. So I thought although it's decorative, it's quite a simple font, and I thought I would recreate the video showing how you can split a font like this, but just with a little bit of a twist. And this font is available free from dafont.com, and go and have a look at the user license. I think from memory it's free to use for personal use, but if you go to Dafont and look for this font, Remeslo STD, and then just read what the license is for. I'm just going to get rid of this off my screen. Now I'm in Canvas Workspace for computer, and you'll know that you're in the computer-based version because what you're seeing here on screen is how it looks. The online version looks different to this. Okay, so if you're using Canvas Workspace and yours doesn't look like this, you're probably using the online or cloud-based version. I'm going to come over to the left to the text icon, and I'm going to type a capital letter M and hit enter. Now, because I've just had this font loaded on my page, it's remembered that that was the last font I've used, so it's brought my letter M up in that font. So with it selected here just on the page, I'm going to come over to the right hand side to the second icon down, which is edit, and under the height I'm just going to make it 8 inches and hit enter on my keyboard, and I've got maintain aspect ratio selected, so it will adjust the width in proportion to my 8-inch height. Now you can see from hopefully this letter on your screen that although there is a decorative element here, it's a nice simple shape, so it's a solid shape. There's no kind of bits in the middle of these leaves that can interfere when you break a design up like this, or that can disappear or can stop you from being able to use the process overlap functions. So that's why I thought I would just do another video and show you, but we can make this a little bit more decorative. So I've got it selected, and I'm going to right click on my mouse, and you'll see from the options here that there's no ungroup option. So if you look at this design, you've got the main letter M, and then you've got this decorative shape, but they don't touch anywhere, so they're not welded together, they're not joined, but they're not a group, because when I right click there's no ungroup option. And a lot of these decorative fonts that are used for splitting are the same. There's lots of elements, but they're not necessarily welded. There's no ungroup facility. So the way that you need to break this apart to be able to play about with it is, with it selected, you need to, under the edit icon, you need to come down to process overlap, and you need to come to the second icon along, which is when you hover over it, it says divide. And if I just left click on that, you'll see now from the screen that there are 2 blue bounding boxes. So in fact, well, there are more than 2. So you can see that this design is made up of several elements. You've got 3 bits here. You've got the big blue bounding box, which was around all the elements originally, and now you've got another bounding box around the letter M. And as I say, that's because the letter M and this swirl design here are not attached to each other or welded to each other. And I can see that these three elements here are separate from this swirl and then the letter. So I'm just going to left click anywhere on the page to deselect, and I'm going to select these three and this swirl but not the letter M. So I'm just going to select those and I'm going to right click and make them a group. Okay, so now when I click on this, I've got one bounding box which is around the swirly shape plus the three little decorative bits in the corner, and then the other bounding box is around my M. So I'm going to select the swirl, right click and create a duplicate. I'm going to come over to the edit icon, and under transform I'm going to flip the duplicate horizontally, and then I can bring it over here so you can have a look at it. So basically these three bits and this are one grouped element which I've duplicated from this side. Okay, so now I could bring these in and I could line them up, and I've got a bit more of a decorative element because I've got, you know, swirls on both sides of my letter. But I want to divide this letter up horizontally through the middle so I can put another word or name or something in it. But to be able to do that, these have all got to be one element, and they're not at the moment. So the way that I'm going to do this, I'm going to select one of my swirls, this one on the right hand side, and I'm going to move it over so the edge of this curve overlaps this M on the right hand side, and I'm just going to use the arrows on my keyboard to scoot it over until I can see that it's overlapped here and here. Then I'm going to choose the one on the left and do the same. So I'm going to bring the arrows, hit the arrows on my keyboard and bring this one over so it lines up, or overlaps I should say, on the left hand edge of the letter M. And I'm kind of looking for a similar overlap as I've got here. So now I'm going to select everything because I want to line them all up now centrally to each other. So I'm going to come over here where it says align, and I'm going to use the middle icon on the bottom row. Now I don't actually like how that looks, so I'm going to undo, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to left click on the first swirl, hold my shift key down, and then left click on the second swirl. So I've only got the two swirls selected, and I'm going to use that same align icon just so I know that they're lined up. These top edges of both swirls are lined up together, and I've got the M in the middle, and I've got an overlap here and here and here and here, and you know, the two bits of my swirl at the bottom are overlapping. So now I'm going to select everything, and I'm going to come back to the edit icon, onto the edit tab, and under process overlap at the bottom I'm going to choose weld, and I'm now welding all this together. Now if you want it to weld at the bottom here, then obviously you need to bring the letter down ever so slightly. So mine touches but doesn't overlap, so I'm going to undo. I'm just going to select the M, and just using the down arrow on my keyboard, I'm just going to move it down ever so slightly so that it overlaps at the bottom, and I know it's still overlapped on either side because I've not moved it. So now I can select everything, come back to process overlap and weld, and now it's welded at the bottom as well as the sides. So if I fill this in with colour just so that hopefully you can see it a bit better on the screen, we've now got more of a decorative element, and we've been able to do that because we were able to break the shape apart, and because it's a simple shape with no little fiddly bits in the middle of these kind of leaves, the whole process, you know, has been a lot easier. So from here now, oh, let me just undo. So obviously these 3 bits on the top left and right are still separate elements, but this is all welded together, and that's fine. So I'm going to select everything and right click and make this a group. So this now all moves as one. I'm going to come over to the basic shapes and grab a rectangle, and I'm just going to make the rectangle about 1/2 inch high. It's not vital, I just need something just to split this letter in half, and I'm going to drag it out so it's wider than the total width of the design. And again, do this by eye, it's entirely up to you. I'm going to select both, center them on the horizontal and vertical. I'm just going to fill in this rectangle so that you can see it better. You don't need to do this for the process, but the rectangle does need to be on top of your letter shape. So that's another reason why I a lot of the times fill them in with colour, because you can see better which element is on the top and which is on the bottom. So now I'm going to select everything and I'm going to use subtract. Now these little bits here in the top left and right hand corner that are not attached to anything may disappear when I do the subtract. So if they do, we'll need to just go back a step and then hopefully we'll be able to rectify that. But for now, I've got the little decorative bits in the top corners plus my welded design now all grouped, and then I've got the rectangle, the skinny rectangle on top. I'm just going to make a duplicate of that because I'm going to need that again in a few minutes. So I'm going to select everything and I'm going to come down to process overlap and hit subtract. Now, as I said, it's done what I wanted it to do. It's broken the design up through the middle, but because those little decorative elements at the top weren't attached to anything, they've disappeared in the subtract process. So I'm going to hit undo, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to select this group and right click and ungroup it. So these 3 shapes are all independent shapes, as are the ones on the right hand side, but the letter M and the swirls are a group of their own. So what I want to do, I want to select the M. I'm not selecting these little bits. I'm going to hold my shift key down, select the red rectangle, and now hit subtract. Now this time it's broken the design up, which is what I want, but these are still here because I didn't include them in the subtract. So now I'm going to left click on this design, and once you hit subtract, if you look, there's no ungroup facility. I'm just right clicking and there's no ungroup facility. So now to break this apart so that we can go a step further, we need to come back to process overlap and we need to come to the second icon, which is divide, and that literally will break up the whole of the design into all its separate parts. So now I can left click here and drag an imaginary box around this bottom half, and I can just move it down out of the way, and then I can bring in my rectangle. I'm going to make a duplicate of it, so I'm right clicking and making a duplicate. I'm going to bring that down there for now. So this design now at the moment is made up of these little elements here, this element, and then these elements. And what I actually want is to be able to weld this red rectangle to the bottom. So I'm going to select everything now and right click and make it a group, because I want to align these two, and if I don't make this a group, all these bits will all just get jumbled up together. So I'm going to bring in the red rectangle and I'm just going to position it so it overlaps the bottom of the black section. I'm going to select both and I'm going to align using the icon in the middle of the top row, which when you hover over it says center, and that's just going to center those together. So now with those selected, I can hit weld, and now they've all changed to one colour, so I know they've welded. And even though these little bits at the top were still separate, even though I grouped them, they've not disappeared. They tend to disappear when you use subtract. So if I just left click anywhere on the page to deselect, and then just left click on this design and move this away, you'll see those bits are still there. So again, now I need to make this all a group. So I'm going to select it all, right click and make it a group. So now this all moves together. So I'm going to bring the red rectangle up here. This item at the bottom, or this element at the bottom, is all one element. So this is easier. When it did the divide, the top section was broken up into several, but the bottom half was only one. So again, I'm going to bring the red rectangle so it overlaps. And again, if you can't see where the overlap is, I'm going to right click, go to arrange and send to back, so you can now see where it overlaps. Because we're welding, it doesn't matter whether this skinny red rectangle is on the top or the bottom. It only really is important when you're doing the subtract function. So now I'm going to select both of these and I'm going to line them up again using the middle icon on the top row of the align objects, which is center, and that will just center them together. And then with them both still selected, I'm going to hit weld. And again, now it's all gone black, so I know it's all welded. So if I bring this back in and I position those two rectangles over the top, that's more or less how our design looked originally before we put the break in the middle. So that's how you split a font. And then obviously from here, what you would do, you would type the rest of your text. So I'm just going to type Morrison in capitals and hit enter. And again, because this was the last font I used, it's selecting the Remeslo, but I want to change it. And I find if you're doing these split fonts, something like Impact, which is a basic font that I think is on any Mac or Windows computer, works well, you know, for the word in the middle, especially when you've got like a decorative font on the outside. So I personally would just bring this up and drag it out to make it kind of sit in the middle. So again, I'll just fill it with black just so you can see. And then I would position this a bit closer, and then I would select the three elements and use center so it's all centered together, and then right click and make it all a group. So this now all moves as one element, but it's just a way of using another font and just making it a little bit more decorative by breaking it apart and duplicating it and adding, you know, this other side on. And I just really wanted to show you that choosing, you know, a simple decorative font, you can kind of, you know, upscale it a little and make it look a bit different. So I hope you found that helpful. Please give the video a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.